Hi, I'm Julie.
And I'm Caleb. Welcome to Nursing You, the podcast where we redefine nursing in today's healthcare landscape. Join Julie and I as we step outside the box on an unconventional healing journey.
Together, we're diving deep into the heart of nursing, exploring the intricate relationships between caregivers and patients with sincerity and depth.
Our mission is to create an open and collaborative experience where learning is expansive and fun.
From the psychological impacts of nursing to the larger implications on the healthcare system, we're sparking conversations that lead to healing and innovation.
We have serious experience and we won't pull our punches, but we'll also weave in some humor along the way because we all know laughter is often the best medicine.
It is, and we won't shy away from any topic, taboo or not. From violence and drugs to family and love, we're tackling it all.
Our nursing knowledge is our base, but we will be bringing insights from philosophy, religion, science, and art to deepen our understanding of the human experience.
So whether you're a nurse, a healthcare professional, or just someone curious about the world of caregiving, this podcast is for you.
One last thing, a quick disclaimer before we dive in. While we're both registered nurses, nothing we discuss here should be taken as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns you may have. The views expressed here are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of our employers or licensing bodies.
So let's get started on this journey together. Welcome to Nursing You, where every conversation leads to a healthier world.
Hello, hello.
Yes, here we are.
Back again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new year.
It is a new year. When you're listening to this, it is a new year.
We're actually recording it on December 8th, so we're 4 weeks out from when this will land in your ears,
which is a weird concept in itself, but necessary.
Well, when you asked me to think about what to talk about in terms of it being the first episode to come out in the new year, it just brought up, just the calendar, like the thought of like, what is the calendar? I'm fascinated by calendars, and the implications of what it is. Meaning, the calendar is our way of keeping track of the sun and the moon. Our calendar, it's called the Gregorian calendar, and the Gregorian calendar is entirely solar, so it's entirely sun-based, and it's based. I mean, most calendars are based off of base 10 math, which is essentially a snazzy way of describing that we count in groups of tens, and then also that numbers are represented within the confines of the digits 1 through 9, 0, 1 through 9. I think I've said this before, that all structures of philosophy, all structures of religion are all at the foundational level attempting to answer or attempting to address the questions of why is this bright ball flying through the sky and then disappearing every day? Every day, like it just keeps happening. And and there are different types of calendars. There's calendars that are entirely based off the lunar cycle. There are calendars that are based off of an amalgamation of the two, solar lunar calendar. I think that astrology is based off of an astrological calendar. I don't know that one as well, or really, I don't know anything about that one. But it's well, actually, I do know that the astrological calendar and the Gregorian calendar are not aligned. I don't know why. That doesn't really make sense. But yeah, those are just some of the thoughts that I was having when you asked me to think about the transition of one year to the next.
Yeah, which is interesting, and that it was just like created by someone. And they decided that, it would be called like January, and that January, like you would just start like 12 months but is it 12 astrological signs? Like there are certain things that kind of string together through all of them, but yet it's kind of all made up.
Uh-huh.
But yet we know that even, in the very, very remote history, there were calendars, there were timekeeping things. And, time is a crazy thing too, because, it can be like one time here, but in Colorado, it's a different time. And in California, it's a different
Oh,
time.
well, we made that up. That's entirely
Yeah.
made up.
Yeah.
In fact, I love this saying. There's a saying, it's been attributed to a Native American Indian chief. It says that only the white man believes that he can cut the end of a rug off, sew it to the top of the rug, and believe he has more rug. And that's daylight savings time, people.
Yeah. And that's daylight savings. Yeah. No, it is. It's just, it's trickery. It's all trickery.
It's idiocy.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But nonetheless, you can get on Amazon and you can get a new calendar, and it fucking starts in January, and they call January 1st the new year.
Welcome to 2025.
Oh god.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's hard not to, living and just learning to be and to not be so rushed and to not work so hard and to just be stepping back. It's very challenging to not, it's hard to get out of all of that because it's so prevalent around you and everything is scheduled and everything has a time. And, it feels like you could only do that really if like you didn't have a job and you just woke up and you did whatever you wanted that day. And, but we don't, like, we are tied, and we do have the jobs, and we do believe and contribute to the money making system and clocking in hourly and doing all of that. And so it's like, before, when I didn't really understand all of that, that was my Groundhog Day every day, doing that. And now I've kind of stepped out of that, and I don't feel so much like that, but it's very hard to not be tied to some of that. And I guess maybe that's the journey. That is the journey.
Well, I'm going to recycle something that I said in one of the earlier episodes that bring a couple of ideas together, that it was a necessary collapse of all systems. And then also the idea of the blessing of rock bottom. The blessing of rock bottom and the collapse of all the requisite collapse of all systems brought me to this place where, I'm analyzing all these things I just took for granted my entire life. All these structures that are in place that hold society together, that you just exist within until you take the time to look at it.
Right.
And start analyzing it. And what does it mean that we're doing all this? I mean, at the end of the day, the lack of meaning of that is cultivated through watching people suffer and die over and over and over demands that you ask the question of what does it mean?
Yeah.
And then you have to then you can get lost in what does it mean. You can, and you can, then you're like, there's a regulatory mechanism that you have to have with internally in your cognitive functions that prevents you from projecting your imagination onto meaning.
Yeah.
You can, then you start grasping at things. I think this is kind of another angle of what I was saying when Riz was on about conspiracy theories, that they, like, for instance, dentistry. For a long time, I was like, oh, what's the chemical
fluoride?
Fluoride, that everybody's in an uproar that it's blocking our pineal gland.
Right.
Okay, number one, dentistry, if you look at the history of dentistry, has saved more lives than any other form of medicine. Like, I don't think that the American Association of Dentistry sat down and was like, how are we going to decrease consciousness? Yeah. I don't think that was part of their conversation. I think things emerge in a much more organic way than and because things don't mean anything anymore, we're projecting these ideas of maleficence, maleficent.
Maleficence.
I'm struggling with that word. We're projecting that malefic force to these kind of faceless bodies of
Yeah.
governance
Yeah.
when really it's just a force of our imagination that
Yeah.
no one, I mean, until they can, I don't know that anybody's proven scientifically that it calcifies the pineal gland. And even if it did, and this is where it becomes a theological perspective that I personally hold, that even if it did calcify the pineal gland, it could never calcify it enough that whatever created all of this, whatever, because we're identifying that everything is in waveforms. So the idea that God spoke creation into being, if you're going to ascribe to that belief, there is no chemical structure, there is no mineral, there is no man-made thing that voice, that creative voice, wherever it's emanating from down to us, there's nothing that could prevent that voice from breaking through and opening that pineal gland.
Right. Right.
There's nothing that can stand
Right.
in the way of that.
Yeah. And maybe it's just thought, like people's, or something to give them something to blame, or maybe it's this is being presented so people become more aware of their glands and the process of opening that and expanding their mind, rather than focusing on like who did that and why did they do that and when did that start and how long's that been going on and what. But it's just like, if you think it is, then work on opening it, then work on the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's a negativity bias.
Yeah.
It's looking at everything through a negative lens, and I think that part of that is that we're acculturated into this capitalistic system in that we have to solve problems. So we're looking for problems, which is looking through a negative lens, like critically, and then we have the objective. We're searching for objective data to validate our biases, and so that is cultivating this kind of culture of looking at everything as a problem, and then I have the solution.
Yeah. Rather than just noticing yourself. And if you are not feeling as good as what you want, doing things that make you feel better, rather than focusing on why it's that way. And I think this kind of is like the therapy thing we talked about a little bit, like really going back and just focusing on, oh God, why? And this, and she did this to me, and that's why I'm this way. And oh my God, I used toothpaste and my mom gave me fluoride treatment and now I'm fucked. And now my pineal gland I can't. And just, if you have a feel about it.
Pineal gland, not penile. Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
That is funny. That is funny that it came out that. Well, if you have an issue, then just work on making it better for yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think thinking about the new year has us thinking about just kind of not dredging up everything and just kind of like, it's all, it's like a kind of a fresh start and thinking about the future, where you want to be, which kind of is evaluating a little bit of where you are now, but not where you've been. Like, why do you gotta talk about like, where have you been? What have you all been doing? Just moving through and noticing where you are now and really looking at where you've been. And I mean, I think we can even look at our podcast, I mean, it's crazy that I think you and I met for coffee in February or January.
I think it was February.
February. And so like, we're literally coming up on a year of
that's
this.
crazy.
It is. It really is. And so that's why time is just a crazy thing, because, you can do something and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. Well, here's an example. It's 2:30 a.m. in the ICU and you're like, you look at the clock again and it's like 2:01. And you just know it's been at least 45 minutes, but it's not. It's only been like 1 minute. Time is crazy. But,
Yeah.
we didn't really have like a plan. We kind of knew we just wanted a podcast. That's what
Well,
we
we
do.
just knew we had stuff to say, and
Yeah.
we like. I mean, the premise that
Yeah.
just having the conversation was going to help other nurses deal with what.
Yeah.
Just know that they're not alone in what they're experiencing.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And just hearing a different person say it a different way,
Mhm.
and hopefully being relatable to, the nurses on the floor, not coming from administration, not coming from a healthcare system, not coming from, a school, just normal people, normal nurses talking about normal stuff that we've been through just to make people feel so they're not alone and that they can relate.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
relating can be a game changer for people. And I think it's been impressive for me our ability to continue pushing forward with creating this platform despite all of the, challenges that came up with everything, and a lot of technology things, a lot of fiddling through and volume issues. And, it's like when that something is meant to be, is supposed to be, is purposeful to you, is meaningful for you, it really is pushing through those barriers, and just to continue going, just
Mhm.
continue to go and learning along the way, you know,
Yeah.
learning. There's a lot of things we've learned, a lot of things we've learned about tech, a lot of things we've learned about each other, a lot of things I've learned about myself and other nurses' experiences. It's
I
been,
really love the interviews.
I do too. Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna just throw this out there. We should one of the things that I'm discovering from doing hospice is we need to do full in-depth conversations and interviews with hospice nurses, executives, social workers. We need
Mhm.
to provide a comprehensive understanding of what hospice is as a community service to help educate the community so that they will opt to enter hospice earlier. This is one of
Mm.
the problems with hospice is that they learn about the benefit too late. So then it's a crisis it's a crisis to get into the hospice, and then the entire process of hospice is compressed, and it raises a lot of questions with the family of how this process is going. And if they would enter it in, there's a 6-month benefit for hospice that
Mhm.
if the patients would enter into that sooner, if people were educated and they would enter into that sooner, it would save so many inappropriate interventions on
Mhm.
our side in within the hospital system. And it's like I kind of view it as a pressure release valve for our
Yeah.
role in critical care.
Yeah.
That if people were really truly educated on what hospice benefit is, then I see hospice as a one of the solutions to the mountain of death that I've described so many times.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that you
I'm
were
throwing
really
that out.
I think that's good. I think that's good. I know personally, we were for my mother-in-law, it was too late, and it wasn't approached they didn't approach us very well about it with
Mhm.
a lot of the correct language, and it was a lot of services, so she declined and to go into hospice, but a lot of benefits she could have had being
Mhm.
in hospice, but because of a not understanding of what it is, because I think the general public feels that hospice is like, "End stage, you're dying in a day." And
Not it.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. It's a transition from life to death, and that
Mhm.
transition can be months. Yeah, and it is very nice that Medicare actually pays for that, and, I think the benefit to them is keeping patients out of the hospital
Mhm.
and keeping those inappropriate admissions for families who, get scared when their loved one changes.
Yeah.
And they come in, and then we as nurses feel like we're doing a lot of inappropriate
Yes.
things to these
Exactly.
patients who who just are dying. They are
They're just
dying.
dying. They're just
Yeah.
dying.
But they're not
And we're
dying
full
right this
blood
minute.
press.
So we
Yeah.
can't do a code blue on them, but all these interventions are for naught. There
Uh-huh.
and it's just
And we know.
we know that, but
Yeah.
the family does not. And I think you're right. If there was a lot more education regarding that, and I'm sure why isn't there? Probably just resources, and the case managers in hospital are completely overworked. Their
Mm.
caseload and how many patients they have to deal with. I mean, you might have say 120 inpatients, and there's like 3 case managers. That's it. So their
Yeah.
list is so long. Like, they have units of patients. They might
Yeah.
have 30 or more patients a piece to try to do discharge planning, which, once you're in the hospital, and if your condition warrants an invitation to hospice, who says that? I mean, you could
Mhm.
have hospice come in, but there just is not enough time because they're trying to get you discharged, or trying to do that, they're trying to get it set up, and sometimes families need longer to think about because for whatever reason, it's such a foreign, and it takes them a long time to make the decision. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic. I mean, people that I've talked to about hospice in the hospital, it's almost like I'm talking about putting them down with the black needle, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I am suggesting that we do a series on this, is that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's just about education.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
it's like, we can do our little part to put out this content and talk about hospice and what the benefit is, because every single person, every single person in our age group is going to be experiencing this in the next 10 to 15 years.
With their
I mean,
parents.
with their parents. I mean, it's already starting. It's
Yeah, yeah.
already starting.
Already
Like,
started.
I already have friends that I'm getting texts from when their elderly
Yeah.
parent is sick. So that is already happening. So if we do our part to educate, I just think that it can only help
Yeah.
all our friends. I mean, that's what
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
doing here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it will
Like,
help every nurse that doesn't get that patient
yes.
inappropriately.
Right. Right. Because I think the situation's always the same when you get the patient from the ER and you're like, they're on hospice, and you're just like, what? And he's
Yeah.
intubated?
Yeah.
Like, you intubated that patient? Now what are we
Yeah.
gonna do?
Right.
It feels gross. It
Yeah.
feels
It's a moral injury.
it is moral. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is moral injury because that fragile little soul who is just trying, their body is just trying to die. Their
Yeah.
soul is in there and their body is just trying to die. And we're doing everything we can do to stop it. And
Yeah.
it's painful. It's so
It's painful.
painful to watch. And you're
Yeah.
right. That would decrease a lot of that particular injury for other nurses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We need
Yeah.
to do
We'll work
education
on
on
that. Yeah, we'll work
that.
on that and get some interviews set up, and we could just do like a series on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. And we work so authentically that as things come up, that it's kind of we're creating as we go, for real.
Sure.
Um, and I think that's why it feels so just good and right to be doing this, because it's not a preset it's there's no motive, there's no ulterior motive, there's no money pushing us. I mean, we're paying for this on our own to do
Yeah.
this,
Right.
and so, yeah, I think anything we put out is going to be beneficial. And thinking about the episode with Riz, he talked a little bit about AI, and I know that you have a fascination with it, and we could talk a little bit about that and what our opinion is about how, because that's just going to come bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's already starting, and as we move into the new year, we may encounter that even more in the workplace and just in general.
I remember saying in that interview, or in that conversation, what's the difference between being human and this artificial consciousness, or this mimicry of consciousness, something to that effect. I think maybe I am a little bit wrong in attributing it more power than it has actually. In that, if you go back and you look through all of the progression of technology throughout human history, the wrestling that is done by humanity with all of the advancements that it creates is struggling to find the good over the bad. Is like all of the elements have their positive and negative sides. Every progression has a positive and negative to it. It can be used for great good, and it can be used for great harm. And this is, I think, just another advancement that we have created. I heard. Actually, I did have this conversation over the weekend with somebody that's just so incredibly intelligent, and I think he mostly shifted my perspective in that he used the locomotive as an example. Everyone back in the day, they said, we're gonna, you don't need a horse for your wagon anymore. We got this thing. It's called a locomotive, and there's a whole story that goes along with it. There's a guy in this village that this salesman comes to the village and he says, you don't need a horse anymore to carry your wagon. We've got a machine that's going to do it for you. And everybody's like, so how many horses does the machine need?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they come up with the analogy of horsepower. It's like having 15 horses or 500 horses. I mean, can you imagine back then saying we're going to hitch 800 horses to this little cart? So the town says they're going to send one of the smartest guy from the village to go inspect this and see if it's real. The guy goes and sits down with one of the knowers of knowledge, and he maybe used a chalkboard to describe exactly how steam works and all this. But the point is that these people couldn't possibly fathom that a machine could carry the wagon. It just was beyond their capacity to understand. And yet here we are all these years later, having done all of the wrestling, all of the refining, all of the development to create. I mean, our cars are so efficient. Mm-hmm. They're so incredible. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And at the end of the day, what really shifted my perspective is that, and to a degree, is that AI is just another machine. It's just another machine, and it can be used for good and it can be used for harm. And at the end of the day, on the other end of that good bad stick is the human. And how the human chooses to wield the power that they have created and been given will determine whether or not it's used for good or for bad.
Yeah.
And I think that is largely true. The only pushback that I still have to my mostly negative bias towards it, or previous negative bias towards it, is that the fundamental difference is that this technology has an element of it that ultimately, if you project into the future far enough, demands that we integrate the technology with our own biology when we haven't even figured out how to prevent hacking on our technological systems as they currently exist. Which means that you're handing over your biological sovereignty to this technology and its susceptibility to external forces. And that I don't like at all. Mm-hmm. So that's the only piece of it that I still push back and say, this is different from all of the other things. Because none of the other things have demanded that we integrate the technology with our biology.
And you think that it will become not a choice? Like, will we be able to decide whether we want to partake in that or not? Or you think it'll be, this is
Well,
what you're doing?
I mean, I think all the scary movies about it, that's the picture, and then the resistance is some underworld
Mm,
of humans that have decided not to participate.
mm,
And how much of that is just the fact that I've been programmed by those shows, but I think that it's an artificial form of enlightenment. The ability to think a thought and have the information populate within your brain, it's severely limited. If you integrate, Neuralink is the only one that I'm really aware of at this point, but you integrate a Neuralink where all you have to do is think a thought and you have all of the information populate in your brain.
mm.
You're an enlightened being.
Yeah, and I can see where you'd say artificial because
It's not
for
your thoughts.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it is your thoughts, but it's being boosted
Uh-huh.
by information that you did not come up with. But you say in the old days, you had a thought. So, like in nursing school when I went, you had a thought. You had to go to the library. You had to go to the library. You had to check all the stuff out. You had to get all the
What's a
books.
library?
Right. You made the decision of what journals you were going to look in just based on your limited knowledge. But you had the idea, you went and you pulled that information. So that was your information. So
Mhm.
now, kids go to school. Now, not even now, but like 10 years ago, you could get on Google and you could look up stuff. You could go to different people's websites and find information. So the amount of information that you had access to was much more big. And now I just feel like with AI, it's just even bigger. The amount of information that's available is bigger, but your thoughts are still the same. And so that's just one very narrow use would be
So
gathering information.
so that brings up an interesting thing for me. Nietzsche was a philosopher that never actually produced a comprehensive philosophy that someone could sit down, study, and adopt. His was more writings that were philosophical, but he was a professor back in the day, and he renounced his professorship uh, because it was impossible for him to interact with the texts that were coming out in a meaningful way to stay educated. So what I've read about him is that he was so overwhelmed by the volume of information that was available to him that he abandoned the pursuit of education, and he ended up killing himself. Actually, he lost his mind because the thing that tipped him over the edge was that he saw someone beat a horse to death, and it threw him into an existential crisis, and he ended
Hmm.
up killing himself. And I'm like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, right.
like
Yeah,
like how many horrible things have we seen
yeah,
that we survived?
right.
It's like, I mean, I think it would be upsetting to watch someone beat a horse. I absolutely think that would
Yeah.
be horrible.
Well, and that was his, his journey,
Yeah, but
so
my point being that there is a saturation point of information that once you become like what's the acronym, TLDR, too long didn't read.
something. I don't know that one. I've heard it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's TLDR. When something's too long to read,
Okay. Oh,
they
yeah.
you respond TLDR.
Yeah, too long to
Like
read.
Nietzsche was the first one to TLDR. He
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, he
it's
was.
too much. It's too much.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
brain can't possibly process all of this information.
yeah.
And so he reduced his philosophy to uh, very quippy um, anecdotes. But I'm not I can't even claim to be a knower of Nietzsche, I can only say that. Well, I read In Emergency Break Glass, and it's a book about Nietzsche and his writings, and it is written by a modern day knower of technology and things and philosophy, and he's applying Nietzsche's writings to navigate the lack of meaning in modern technological in a modern technological
Hmm.
world. And it's a fascinating book. Highly
Yeah.
recommended. At the tippy top of my reading list.
Hmm.
If you're interested in that sort of thing, um, we'll have a link
Hmm.
to that book. It's fantastic. So good. I should read it again. Honestly, it's
Hmm.
been a long time. It's been a long time since I read it. So
Yeah.
highly
Well, and I
recommend.
think when it comes to, nursing and healthcare in general, I think that AI will bring, well, like you've already said, there's positive and negative to it, but I think it could have a lot of benefits to reducing the amount of work necessary for charting. I feel like the use of it can be intuitive to what the nurse inputs, just from the brief triage, from the brief, like an admission history, that it will be able to draw I just feel like charting these days, it feels very clunky, and it's like screen to screen, and there's multiple things of the same thing in multiple different places, and, every charting system is different, and even though you're gleaning the same information, which ultimately then, like, you input the information, it spits out these interventions, and that's how we kind of base our plan of care or whatever you wanna say about that. Um, and I feel like with using AI, it could be a lot more intuitive, it could be a lot more, personalized and less clunky to create the document, the medical record or the document that is created when we chart. Because when we chart, it's like, I've done some legal nurse consulting before, and when you pull the chart, you're putting the story together. That's it. You're putting together a picture of what happened day by day, sequence of events, who came in, what time was it, what time was the medication, was it reassessed, was their pain helped, when were they, when were they taken off the ventilator? When were they put on oxygen? When did they do the ABG? Why did they do the CAT so it creates this narrative, really, is what the charting is. Well, and as we know, charting is also made to extract information based on a payer system. So
Mm,
I'm not really talking about that because that is another
that's a
subject,
different conversation.
whole different conversation. But what the charting does do, like when I'm looking at a case, I'm not looking for payer. I'm not looking for information about that. I'm looking about the story of the patient and
Uh-huh.
why they decided to do this, or why were you documenting Q2 hour turns, or why was that even included and who added it, and why did they add it, and when did they add it, and why weren't they turning before but now they're turning, and is there a wound, and so different things like that. And I feel like AI could streamline a lot of that and make it much more, honestly, it could even just spit out the story. So for anybody looking at medical records to try to see what happened, it would just be so simple. AI could just extract all the information and then create a story. And I think
Mm.
it does that based on all the access to all of the things that it has. I mean, I am in no way in a position to be able to explain artificial intelligence, but just the brief times that I've used it and have been on there communicate, like I've had an account with OpenAI or whatever that is, for like 2 years. And I've put in questions. I've put in, what do you think about? I've put in my astrology. I've put in, um, create a cover letter. I've put in, so all of my input into with that AI. I can now 2 years later ask it, tell me, create a something or another of something or another of why, create a mission for my new business or whatever, or create a mission for why I am coaching or something like that. And it will take everything it knows and everything that I have given it is information and create that. And it is incredibly accurate. And so it's very interesting. And I have no idea how and why it works, but the intention behind it, I think, is where, like what you've already said, that, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. And,
Mhm.
as far as nursing and using it within the hospital, I do not worry that robots are going to replace nurses. I absolutely do not believe that will happen. There may be certain aspects to nursing,
Mhm.
kind of like how, surgeons, and now they'd use the robots to do the knees and arthroscopies, and they use in brain surgery and all that. They do use um robotics, and that's kind of artificial intelligence. Um, but by no means, I don't believe that it will take over a human.
I think it will.
You do?
I do.
How could
Eventually.
it?
I don't know yet.
So
I don't know
it's
yet.
possible. It's
Yeah.
possible.
I think, I mean, there's aspects of the job. I always, this is one of the things that I always said this. A monkey could do my job. Some
Yeah.
parts of it,
Some
like,
some parts of it for sure.
for sure. It just gets to be so rote.
Yeah.
So much of it, that it literally, I think anyone could do this job if they
Yeah,
if
but
they were.
if you took the nurse away from the bedside and had a monkey sitting there doing all of those tasks, little tasks.
Mhm.
In the ER, that reminds me a lot of in the ER, because ER, for my opinion, it is a lot of task nursing. It's tasks.
Uh-huh.
It is quick, it is fast paced, and you really priority is tasks. IV fluids, medications,
Uh-huh.
patient scan, looking at labs, replacing fluids, replacing magnesium, giving medicines, giving discharge instructions. Da, 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 da. Next, you know,
Uh-huh.
and but I don't think a monkey would ever be able to replace, like, the essence of nursing.
The thinking
The
element,
human.
the
Yeah.
ability to amalgamate the situation, all
I
the
think
information of the patient, all
they
the
could
information
be
of the drugs. I know, yeah,
yeah. They could be
yeah.
taught to critically think, I believe. I believe an
Mhm.
artificial intelligence can critically think, but I don't there's not the human connection, so that is scary if
Well, and the human connection. So that's the last bit I don't think that I said about my perspective on AI, and how it's shifted from my conversations this weekend, is that at the end of the day, the fundamental difference is that we have a soul and it does not, and that is its limiting factor.
Mhm.
It is soulless, and so it ultimately is a tool that we are wielding and have the choice of how to do so.
Yeah, 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 a tool. I do believe that as
It's
well.
a tool.
Yeah, yeah, and just like, a hammer is also a tool, and you can use it to hammer nails, or you can use it to smash someone in the back of the head and kill them.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I mean, it's a tool.
Yeah,
So, you know, you could be building a home for the homeless using your
yeah.
hammer or
Reminds me of
something.
Crime and Punishment. Dostoevsky. His book is essentially about that.
Mm.
Using a hammer that way.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
it's
I
pretty
have not read that book.
it's
Yeah,
pretty rough.
yeah.
Um, Fascinating book. Goodness gracious. I love the online conversation. There's self-help books and there's classical literature. And the classical literature people are super critical of self-help books because all of the classical literature is story format of self-help.
Mhm.
And it's using stories and it's like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. Those are my. I've spent the most time with those two by far, and I would say that if you pick up any of their works, what you're picking up is a psychoanalytic tool to
Mhm.
understand yourself better. It's just hidden in story format.
Yeah. And I think even the process of understanding that concept while you're reading the book is therapeutic
Yeah,
versus
I don't know that it immediately presents itself as that, but
no, no, no. Oh, I don't think
yeah,
so. I don't think
yeah,
people know that they're doing that when they're doing that, but it is,
yeah,
you know. When
yeah,
you pick up a self-help book, that's the intention is like, "Oh god, I hope this helps me and I'm going to learn some stuff from this." But, if you would open your mind when you do read literature, especially in, from historical literature,
yeah.
the opening your mind to say, what could this be teaching me? It's not just entertainment, you know?
Uh-huh.
That's they didn't write back then for entertainment, they were writing
Yeah,
and for meaning, and everything meant something.
yeah.
Yeah.
How did I get to classical literature?
Well, we were just talking about books.
We've
I know.
spanned the entire gamut.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, we were
My
just talking
goodness.
about books, and you were mentioning
Oh,
the
the
yeah,
hammer.
the
Yeah,
hammer and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
author.
Ugh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
So,
gruesome scene.
yeah, I mean, I think, coming into 2025, I don't think we'll particularly do things much different, but I think it feels January feels like a springboard, like a spring off
Yeah.
board. You get done with the holiday. What they call the end of the year, is just a rolling wave to me. It's, you start with the holiday, just the holiday, all of it. And I mean, it's so much. And then, January comes and it just feels like a kind of an open field, to
Yeah.
do for me. And especially this year, there was a lot that went on in 2024 that was heavy and affected a lot of people. And, bringing light and hope into the new year is what makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know what can our viewers look forward to with us with this podcast for this year?
Well, I think the hospice series is a must,
Mhm.
must.
Mhm.
Um, I would like to present. I would like for you and I to sit down and watch the movie Night at the Museum, and I will share with you how the museum is an allegory for mental health, and do a special presentation on my analysis of Night at the Museum.
Oh, that'd be
Um,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
that'd be a good one. Mhm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I would like to do that. I've wanted to do that for a long time.
Mhm.
I've started on it. I have in my Canva account, I already have some of the ideas written down and documented in there in
Mhm.
a presentation format. So I don't know, maybe doing like a little retreat. Maybe I'll come out and stay with you and Joe
Mhm.
for a weekend, and we'll just do it.
Mhm.
We'll watch the movie and document it and figure out how to,
Yeah. What it all means.
yeah, create
Yeah.
something beautiful from it.
Yeah.
Because I
Fun fun thing.
once I saw that, it was like once I recognized it as an allegory and then started watching it, I've watched it so many times and
Mhm.
studied it, and it's just so beautiful. They did
Mhm.
such an amazing job with that movie.
Hmm.
So I would love to know if that was truly their intention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if
I
they
bet
were
there's
doing
information out there on that.
I've never seen anything,
No?
on
Hmm.
that, but yeah.
Interesting.
How about you? What do you wanna bring into the year? What ideas do you have?
Well, I feel like this year is more of a community year. I feel like 2024 I was pretty, not isolated because I've been isolated and that's not what this year's been, but I finished up school and that was very time consuming for me and I want to be out community more.
Ah,
um, doing more things with others just in general or in this capacity of
uh-huh,
nursing you and just kind of aligning with the community, the Kansas City community where I
uh-huh,
live, and kind of seeing where we might fit in, seeing where what we have to offer, is needed somewhere, besides, just on the waves of the internet.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I think about this podcast all the time, because so it feels big. It feels meant to be. It feels like it's just beginning.
Yeah.
So, and again,
Happy
if you
New
guys
Year.
Happy New Year. That's funny. If you have any comments or ideas, or, because we're open to whatever, and like and share the podcast. That gets it out there more. And I mean, people are listening. They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers, it's crazy. Lots into different countries, even people are listening.
Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy.
I know, it really is. Yeah.
I love that. I would love to hear from the people that are listening in foreign countries.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we'll get somebody on who is in a foreign country and does have a different health system. And I would
be
love
amazing.
I would love to know what that's like, to be in another country. Yeah, to know the differences and how things work, and what their perception is about what the United States is. Yeah. Does anybody, anybody?
Could be. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Oh God. Well,
it was fun.
It was. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. We will. I think we have a guest next week, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
So we'll see everybody next week.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Keep the dialogue going by connecting with us on social media posted in the links below, or by visiting our website.
Together, let's continue to redefine nursing and shape a brighter future for those we care for. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep nurturing those connections.
And don't forget to be kind to yourself.